When I was 13 years old, I lived in a primarily white neighborhood, where there weren't a lot of black people. I was going to school and spending my days just like I did when I was 13, but one day a boy called Joey came into my class. Joey was black. In fact, I think he was the only black person in our entire school. Already he was a sore thumb sticking out, but he was really just an ordinary boy just like me, having similar interests like sports and comic books, video games. But the 13-year-old me didn't understand that. In my eyes, Joey looked repulsive somehow. I thought he was unnatural. I obviously didn't hate him. It was just that I for some reason felt disgusted by him at that time, because he was black, and it wasn't just me, a lot of my classmates gossiped about him too, seemingly sharing my opinion. Thinking we should play a prank on him. We started to harass him almost every day, like hiding his school bag or giving him funny names. We thought it was all games and fun, but in reality this was just plain bullying and nothing else. But Joey took it all. He was never really riled up every time something like this happened. Neither did he call for anyone. He just silently endured until everyone stopped doing it as they got bored of it. I too stopped, but my repulsion never vanished. I simply started to avoid Joey, trying to think that he was not there. This was about the time Fresh Prince of Bel-Air started airing, and probably a year later. Our school since then had a lot more black people around, and a lot of controversies were reported because of this, but I never kept them in mind. Being so young. Honestly, I didn't like the show at first when it first aired. This being for the same reason as why I didn't like Joey, as I felt repulsed by the black actors. But my mother really liked the show, and since we only had one TV, and I was addicted to the TV, I had no other choice but to watch it with my mother until I too started to actually like the show as well. I got over my repulsion of the black actors, but not against black people in real life, as I was more engaged into the comedy. This is when finally the show started to teach the viewers its lessons in subtle ways. I hadn't watched the show in a long while, so I don't remember the exact episode, but there was this one episode where Will talks with Carlton about their trip in the car, and Will starts to flip out about the police stopping the both of them. Carlton is oblivious as to why Will is so upset, and starts saying that it all wouldn't have happened if they had a map, which makes Will even more upset as he realizes that Carlton doesn't understand what racial profiling or discrimination is, as he never seemed to have experienced the same thing as Will, as he came from a rich upbringing and a nice neighborhood. This scene ends with Will sarcastically telling Carlton that it was all because of the map, and not because of their skin color the police stopped them, before leaving to his room. Well, Carlton simply doesn't understand. The next scene is where Carlton's dad comes in and wishes his son good night. This is where Carlton asks his father about whether or not the police did the right thing and were doing their job. His father replies, "I asked myself the first time I was stopped," and then says goodnight, before leaving Carlton by himself to contemplate. I don't know why this scene stuck with me so much, or why as a child it had that much of an impact on me, but I thought it about for a week later, and would stay up at night thinking about it, while also thinking about all those other things I had done to Joey, and how he must have felt, and why I did those things, when he never did anything to me. I pondered on these thoughts for a month until I couldn't take it anymore, and decided one day on our lunch break I would talk to Joey. Our school had a lot more black people in it that time, but Joey still was the only black person in our class. He was loner too, as he never seemed to have attempted to talk to anyone, neither did anyone else look to have approached him. I found him sitting in the cafeteria by himself eating a radish sandwich. I knew that, since I too ate those, since they were my favorite. I didn't know how to approach him, or how to talk to him, as I felt incredibly awkward doing what I was about to do. I also made sure nobody knew what I was doing, which is why I tried to talk to him on lunch break, since most of our classmates never went to the cafeteria to eat and brought their own lunch. Eventually I got over my awkwardness and came over intending to talk to him. By sitting next to him, Joey immediately noticed me when I sat near him, but didn't say anything other than glance at me before returning back to his sandwich. I too didn't talk, and just like that I think an entire lunch break passed with us not talking and me just awkward as hell, just sitting next to him saying nothing. I asked Joey later, when we were much older, like what that he thought when I did that. He told me that he thought I was about to harass him, and that what I was doing was actually the most nervous he was compared to everything else he had experienced, since he had never anyone sit like me next to him as silent as a rock, without knowing what I would do. We laughed our asses off. Anyways, this actually continued for like 4 days, where I would sit down at lunch break next to Joey, without saying another word, as I didn't know what to say exactly. You know how kids are asking for forgiveness isn't something kids can do that easily with their stubborn minds. Finally, after 3rd day, and thinking how unbearable this was, I finally just wanted this to get with, and when lunch break came around, I again sat next to him with my own lunch, and immediately spoke before he could start eating. "I am sorry." "What?" "I am sorry." "And for what?" "I am sorry for doing the things I did to you." Ah, okay. He started eating. I, not eating it all, still waited as I expected to hear something else. But I never did, as he simply ate while I looked at him waiting for the words I expected to hear. He, too, noticed me staring at me expectantly, and stopped eating before turning to me. What? So you forgive me? Ah, no. And that's pretty much the end of conversation. I was totally dumbfounded, and had no idea what to say next. Joey too didn't seem to want to talk anymore, and simply finished his lunch, while I did too. For the next week, I pretty much pondered about what to do next. Joey had refused my apology, and I was clueless as to what to do. Because of that, I simply continued to have my lunch with Joey every day. Since I got used to it, we also started talking, not about the apology, but just talking about hobbies like comics and video games. My repulsion towards him also disappeared, as I started to understand Joey as a person more than something else. Before I knew it, we became pretty tight friends, going over to each other's houses and playing. My original friends also became more friendly with Joey once I started to invite and play with him more. This continued until our high school years, and even until university, as both me and Joey attended the same university, studying different fields, with me studying geology and him studying chemistry. We stayed friends our entire life, really. And the reason I am making this post is because I wanted to tell this story, as Joey had married recently and asked me to become his best man, where I told the same story at his wedding. We drunk that night too, with me asking how being a married man was like, and him replying he couldn't be happier. We got pretty drunk because of that, and since I told the story, there's something on the back of my mind that I forgot and wanted to ask. After all these years, did Joey ever forgive me? I asked him, both of us being absolutely wasted as we sat on the terrace. I didn't see his face, but he did tell me. No, even after all these years, he said he still hadn't forgiven me. Being in a drunken stupor, he said that I was his best friend and that he would never forgive me, that he would hold this grudge until we both became rotten old men, and that I had to always stay with him, so that I would one day forgive myself. Instead of asking him something so irrelevant. And just like that, we are here. I am writing this post in an effort to do exactly that, as I don't really want to keep this up until me and Joey both become old men. Not that I mind, but I rather leave something like this behind, instead of keeping it with me. I hope others too can learn something from this story in a sense. And always Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is the best TV show in the world. Everything else nowadays is trash. Fight me, imbeciles.